Let's take a look at variables. This is, pretty fundamental component of programming. As you have done programming before, you'll be familiar with them. So here is kind of a list of different common variable types that are in Java and a couple uses for them. So our first one is an integer. So we're going to set that as int length. So this one here is an integer which represents a whole number. So it's a number that cannot have a decimal. Our second main one that we are going to be using is a double, which is a number that can have a decimal. Now, there are different variable types that can handle decimals. I tend to use a double because they're a little bit larger, so they'll hold on to more decimal places than other similar variables. We'll do some measurements, so we'll have a unit of measurement that we'll be using here. Now, this char here represents a single character. So this single character can be a letter. It can be a space. You can use even an escape character. If you remember that from the special characters video. So all of those are possible. So we'll get a couple other variables that we'll be using. So we'll be calculating an area using this. Sorry, not equals. Area. We've got an area that we'll be calculating with this. And another one that we'll be using is a Boolean variable. And I'll call this verify, and we'll make this true. So this is a value that can only be true or false. Just like 1 or 0, on or off. So this is typical, variable types that can only be one or another. So let's take a look at a few things that we can do. So let's set the length to be equal to 5. So one thing that you'll notice with the online GDB compiler is that values that variables can hold are in blue. So verify here, the true value is in blue. The 5 is in blue. So this isn't a piece of text, it's an actual value, same thing as this 5 down here. So what we'll do is, if I wanted to run this program, what we'll do is we'll do a println. So system.out.println, and we'll print the length. We'll be doing more with this in just a minute, but just to show you an example, and I'll run that. So when I'm running this, it gives me that the length is 5, which is great. Okay. So now, as you've got some experience probably with other programming languages, I am going to switch this to 5.7. So try to predict what this is going to do before you run it, and you may be surprised. Unlike other programming languages that you might be familiar with, putting a value with a decimal into an integer gives you this error here. So it's an incompatible type. You can't fit this value into an integer container. Other programming languages will just drop the 0.7 and be okay with this, but this is not allowed in Java. So we'll just put as a note so you remember for later, 5.7 is an error. So it will not let you put a decimal value here. So we'll do a width, gets the value 7.8. So remember, an equals here does not mean equal sign. It is going to represent gets the value. This is an action. So what we're doing here is this width will get the value 7.8. We'll set a char variable. So we'll go char, and we'll make this in meters. So, oh my gosh, it's the unit. There we go. And then we'll make this in meters. So the way that you set this, which will be different from text, is you use single quotation marks whenever it's a single character. So this is different from the double quotes that you use for text. So whenever you're setting a character, it is with single quotation marks. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we'll calculate the area here, and then we'll do some output. So the area will get the value of the length times the width. So this will be of course, the operation for multiply. Now let's do some output just to see how these variable types interact with the output. So I will just say the length is, and we want to combine these two things. So we want to put the text that won't change with the length that might be set to different values. So we're going to put a plus here. So we're going to use a plus for that. And then we're also going to add on the unit. So if I run this, it should give me the length is 5 meters, because it's adding together the value 5 and the character M for meters, and we get that as our output. So I'm going to copy and paste a little bit to save myself some time, because the second one is going to be the width. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I am going to, let's put the area here. So I'm going to do the same thing. The area is, now we're going to do the area plus the unit, and it's squared, so I'm going to put a 2 there as well. So if I run this, there we go. And we'll just remember that is squared. So now a couple different things. Let's calculate here what the area is. Well, actually, let's do the perimeter. So system.out.println, the perimeter is, now what you can do is you can calculate the values right in here, but I want to show you something interesting that happens. So the perimeter is going to be the width plus the width plus the length plus the length plus, and then we're going to add on the unit at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this, take a look at what happens. Gotta put a semicolon every time. Run that again. Okay, let's take a look at what happened here. Now you get this this number here. So 7.87.855. What has happened here is it is giving me 7.8, which is the width twice, plus the length, plus the length. So what's happened here is this does not work because the addition value here turns into a concatenation symbol. So what it does is, instead of like if you had 1 plus 1, it would normally be 2, but if you put it in output like this, it would actually be 11. So this line of code does not function. So I'm going to turn it into a comment by putting these 2 slashes so that it won't run, and we can keep that as an example. Now, if I wanted to get the perimeter and I didn't want a variable to handle the perimeter, how would I accomplish that? So here's how we can do that. It's a little bit awkward, but it'll work. We are going to print, not println, the word perimeter and a space. On the next line, what we're going to do is we are going to system.out.print, not in quotation marks, we're going to put the width plus the length plus the length, semicolon, and then we're going to system.out.println the finally the unit. Okay, so watch how this comes together. Yeah, making sure my spacing is good. Now this, it's totally fine with, and I get 25.6. The reason for that is because this line of code contains no text, the pluses remain as actual addition symbols instead of switching to concatenation symbols, which they become as soon as you introduce some text there. So that's a pretty important thing to remember. So the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this Boolean. So we'll just say system.out.println. The following is, and we'll add on the verify value, which is set to true. Oops. So I'm going to run this. There we go. So it'll say the following is true. So you can print this out like it's text, like you're basically displaying the value of it. And you can also do operations with Booleans, and we're going to see this more a little bit later. You could do something like this. Verify gets the value of, and we are going to negate it. So it even has a Boolean operators that are totally different from what you're doing sometimes with mathematical operation. This thing will negate whatever verify in. So verify is going to get the value of basically the opposite of verify, and that's what that line of code does, which we'll see later. And then you end up with, now the following is false. So anyway, this is an overview of common variable types that we'll be using in many more programs in Java throughout this course.